I'm back again. Before we start, I want to give a more explicit warning about some of the content in this video. We'll be looking at real images of maggots, and seeing some fake ones swim around all gross. There's also illustrated gore in my usual painterly style. If you're uncomfortable with any of that, I'll give one final warning before it shows up so that you can exit the video. So I'm back, with another devlog about my medieval medical horror game, where you play as a doctor trying to save a village from a deadly plague. It's heavily inspired by both mystery and management games, with some eldritch horror thrown in there. If you'd like to learn more about the game overall, you can check out the pinned video on my channel. Last time, I talked about how I want my game to always feel real. I think if you spend too long in menus in a game, it's very easy to disconnect from its narrative. So I wanted to make sure my characters and their experiences are front and center, especially when you're diagnosing and treating them. To achieve this, I decided to create minigames for each treatment that you can apply to your patients. The player will have to use their mouse to swab, stitch, and bandage. Pain, blood, and fear will be fully visible as you work. Hopefully, this will ground the player in the world and make its events feel more weighty. There are two major inspirations that I drew from for these minigames. The first is Dark Cut. I've mentioned it before. It's an old Flash game that fascinated me as a kid. I talk a little bit more about this inspiration in my first devlog if you're interested. In it, you play as a medieval doctor treating a variety of ailments using mouse-based actions. It's super simple, but a great starting point. I also drew pretty heavily from Cooking Mama. I know it's a weird inspiration for a game this dark, but I wanted to replicate the feeling of Cooking Mama's fast-paced, really intuitive minigames. Except you're cutting up gross, oozing bubas instead of roast chicken. I really love how those games use fairly simple mouse actions in a lot of interesting ways to make your interactions with the world feel a lot more tactile. There's a lot to draw from here when trying to create interesting, effective minigames that don't take away from the main gameplay too much. Because you're probably going to be repeating these minigames several times as you play, I want them to be short, snappy, and mostly based on the mouse. Each minigame is made up of steps that you complete one by one. The more complex the treatment, the more steps it will have. To ease ourselves in, let's start with the simplest minigame I could think of, Rehydration. Surely, nothing will go wrong. First up, planning. I wanted to sketch each minigame out before I put it together so that I had a clear idea of what I wanted to achieve. This is one of the simplest treatments, so I'm kind of wanting something super simple. I'm almost tempted for it just to be pour water. Done. I'm a genius. Great, the planning is done. That was easy. Let's start programming. Okay, it's just one step. This should be pretty easy to make. Hopefully it won't take too long. Just gotta slap together a Unity scene with a canvas and some images. I'll put down some placeholder sprites for now. I just need a cup, a jug, and a table. I want the player to click to pick up the jug, then drag it over the cup. Then it should tip over and start pouring water when you're close enough. If you drop the jug, it should just land back on the table. Why is that? Oh, goddammit, system numerics, why are you always here? Why? No one likes you. Okay, I need to explain something here. I use Vector 3 and Vector 2 in my Unity scripts a lot. I also mistype things, a lot. If at any point you type Vector space 3 instead of Vector 3, Unity will very helpfully add the system numerics namespace to the top of the script and break literally everything. So I have to go and manually delete it. It's extremely annoying, and I do it constantly. Nope. No. Okay, that's definitely not correct. Where did it go? No. Absolutely not. Almost? Not quite. Oh my god, it's working. Okay. Okay, it's working. Jesus, finally. Okay, let's try that. Oh. Kinda. Okay. Oh. It's a cup. Oh. That's pretty close. Honestly. How about... Okay, that's not quite right. Have I created jug? No. Lads, we got him. And it's working. That took way too long for how simple it is. At least it can't get any worse from here, right? Okay, let's start drawing some assets. I would just like to take a minute for us to admire this jug. I'm very proud of it. Thank you for your time. Okay, let's make a cup. I guess we go wood since, you know, they're peasants. Don't ask me how they made these things watertight. I don't know. I already fell into a 10-hour research hole about medieval pottery glaze for the jug. I can't risk it. Fun fact, achieving this green colour on pottery in this period was usually done using a copper-based glaze. Ta-da! Now, just to make it actually work. And the assets are in, and they look great. I'm so happy with them. The final step is to chuck a super simple particle system in there for the water. That way it can pour dynamically and stop and start as needed. It doesn't look like it's working. No matter what I did, it just wouldn't play nicely with my existing images, which is weird because I swear I've done particle systems in 2D Unity scenes before. So I did some research. Oh my god. So, it turns out you can't really use particle systems with Unity UI images on a canvas, which is what I built my entire scene out of. Why did I use a canvas? Why did I make my minigame out of UI images? Only God can answer those questions for you. I have no idea, it was a cursed decision. There is no good reason for doing this. On the other hand, particle systems work perfectly with normal Unity sprites. You know, the thing a sane person would build their video game out of. So now, I just have to go and redo the entire thing and modify my script so that it works with sprites instead of images. So while past me is redoing literally all of that, I want to salvage a little bit of my dignity. I swear I'm not a complete idiot, but my brain is a bowl of pudding, there's pretty much nothing up there. Every night while I sleep, it clears out pretty much all information I have about Unity and how to program, and I have to relearn it the next day. Yesterday I had to relearn what a lerp is, even though I've been using them for 4 years straight, so I'm trying here. Oh look, she's done. Isn't it nice watching it all happen in fast forward without actually having to do any of the work? Now we just add the particle system. And wow, look, it works perfectly. Almost like Unity expects you to make a video game out of sprites and not UI images. Who would have thought? The final step is tracking how much water goes into the cup and ending the minigame once it hits its goal. Add a few sounds in there, just gotta visit freesound.org, my beloved. I also added a little progress bar to track how much water you poured and some proper functional UI. I did make that in UI images because that's what they're for. And it's done. What do you think? Here's the final version with all the sound effects and sprites, for now, added. With that minigame done, it's time to move on to something a little messier, but also more interesting. This is your final warning for bugs and illustrated gore. Tap out now if you don't want to see that. So since everything went perfectly smoothly with that first minigame, I think I'm ready for something a bit more complicated. How about maggots? In the game, infection and necrosis are some of the most dangerous symptoms your patients can develop. They quickly lead to death if not treated properly, and you may even need to take desperate measures in some cases. But before reaching that point, there are other ways you can try and curb the infection. Maggots have been used for exactly this purpose since the dawn of civilization. They weren't a common treatment in medieval Europe where the game is set, but there's enough precedent that I'm comfortable including them as an obscure treatment that you'll have to research first. To keep this short, when certain maggots infest a wound, they eat away only dead and infected tissue, leaving healthy parts intact. They're far more precise than any human surgeon could ever be, and even excrete an antibacterial substance as they work, which helps further reduce the infection. In modern day, they're actually making a comeback in medicine. They're fairly risk-free, painless, and can be genuinely life-saving in some cases. It's also a treatment method that is not impacted by antibiotic resistance. So to ask a question no one has asked before, how do I gamify putting maggots in a wound? Because this is a medium complexity treatment, it should have about 3 steps. Each one should be fairly quick and simple to complete, and feel distinct from each other. So, first, you clean the wound with a damp cloth. Maggots need a clean, moist environment to do their work. Then you scoop some maggots out of a pot and add them to the wound. Finally, you wrap it up in breathable bandages. In the real world, these would be left for 2 to 3 days until the maggots have eaten away all of the dead flesh and grown almost to maturity. Then they're removed and disposed of. I had some trouble figuring out how this removal would work in-game, since it's pretty hard to have a minigame span multiple days with the way I have things set up. In the end, I settled on just excluding this removal process for now. I trust the player to assume that it happens at some point without it being explicitly shown. If you think this is the wrong move, please let me know. I'm honestly still not sure about it, but I also can't think of any other solution. Okay, let's get started in Unity. I start by building the scene, same as always. This time I am using sprites. And then it's coding time. Let's start with the cleaning step. I want the wound to visibly change as you clean it. I settled on having a dirty sprite that is overlaid on the clean one, and as you wipe, the dirty sprite is hidden. Unfortunately, live editing a sprite like this requires... shader graphs. Despite being just terrible at shader graphs, I eventually got this working. It's not great, but it's workable. I think it's fine for now. Next up, let's paint some disco rice. I decided to make these little guys a bit more detailed than I normally would for something this small, since they're kind of the focal point of the scene. Once the sprite's done, I rig it up in Unity and make a little looping, squirmy, gross animation. Later on I can make each maggot start its animation at a random point, so they're not all squirming in sync. Now, let's get that spoon functional. I want the player to grab the spoon, drag it through the maggots to pick some of them up, and then hover over the wound to drop them. To achieve this, I created some pickup spots on the spoon that will try and grab onto any maggots it gets close to. If they're holding a maggot and the spoon goes over the wound, they'll deploy it. Don't mind the weird stretchy maggots, I fixed that later, I swear. And now, the final step. Bandages. I wanted this to be a pretty modular system so I can reuse it in other minigames. So it was a little bit more complicated than expected. I want the player to drag their mouse across the limb to wrap each layer of the bandage, inspired by the stitching from Dark Cut. This means, once more, I must dive into the deep. Okay, honestly, that wasn't as bad as I expected. It went pretty smoothly. Now let's make some proper assets to go with it. The spoon and cloth are both pretty easy. I whacked those out in an evening or two. Not bad. The leg is a little bit more complicated. Later on, I'll need a variety of sprites for different characters to match different skin tones and body types. Somehow, I don't think this picture is a good reference for the leg of someone like Hugo the blacksmith, but it's fine as a default for now. Okay, final warning about gore. I will never show any real images on this channel, but my illustrations are based on real images, so they can get pretty realistic. I wanted to make a wound that's gone very necrotic. Realistically, if you had this level of infection in medieval times, you're probably just dead, but hey, it's a video game. I used real muscle and bone structures to build up the anatomy here. I think when you're drawing injuries of any kind, this is really helpful to do. I took a while to figure out the pose here. I imagined the patient lying on their side on a table, but in that kind of pose you'd probably normally see 2 legs here. I'll be honest, I just really didn't want to draw a second leg, but I also wanted the pose to be kind of believable. You should know that to figure out which pose worked, I ended up lying on my dusty ass floor trying out a bunch of sick person poses, and I ended up settling on this. So yeah, no second leg. Feel free to cancel me for my sin of sloth. While we're at this point of the illustration, I also just want to call out how huge subsurface skin coloration is for any artist watching. Check out the before and after. I love showing these. Maybe I'll make a tutorial later, but for now I'm just gonna point at it and tell you to look at it. I painted a clean and a dirty version of the wound so I could implement my cleaning mechanic properly. I also made a mask of the edge of the wound so that maggots could kind of go inside it a little bit. It took a bit of extra time, but I really feel like it sells the effect later on. I wanted to avoid it feeling like a bunch of PNGs on top of another PNG, you know? Next up, Bandages, the final sprite we need. When creating these, I had to work really hard to keep the sections separate so they could appear one at a time, while also making them still look cohesive in the end. This is harder than you might think, but I'm pretty happy with the final result. Just a little bit more tweaking of the shader graph, and ta-da, it's working. That was suspiciously easy, and I don't trust it. The last step is filling it out with some sound effects. I knew from the beginning that I wanted some really good, like, mac and cheese sound effects for the maggots to sell the grossness. I think I achieved that in the end. Let me know what you think. The green placeholder circles on the bandages don't look great, but they're placeholders. Other than that, I'm super happy with how this looks and feels. Let me know what you think. Here's a final version with all the effects and images. And that's it. That's 2 minigames done out of the total of 9 that I had planned. Hopefully things go a little smoother next time than with the water thing. That took a couple years off my lifespan, I swear. I'm trying to hit a balance between serious themes and an actually fun game, and I'm never sure I'm really achieving that, so let me know what you think. As always, feedback is appreciated, even if you just want to tell me that my art is so ugly that a horse would like to eat it. That honestly made my day, thank you, it's really funny. The next video is going to be another character speed paint, this time with a bit more focus on lore. My Discord server actually got to vote on which character this next one would focus on. I'll leave a link to join in the description, and if you join in the next few days, you'll get to vote on which minigames I tackle next. If you also just want to follow my progress in general, you could like and subscribe. It means so much to me and it really helps me out with the algorithm. Okay, I'm gonna go crawl back into the sinkhole under my house and get back to work. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.